Welcome.
Yeah, that's the volume I like.
Huh?
That's the volume I like.
Okay, good. And tonight's lesson is on resurrection. And so I will, there are some things in here, I'm gonna probably go through a bunch of scriptures again, but I think you'll be able to follow really well. So let me open up with a word of prayer. Father, with praise and glory again, thank you for this time, thank you for this season, thank you for watching over us. Continue to pray for those who are unable to be with us, and that you would be with them and comfort them. And may you pour out your spirit of truth upon us, and may you enlighten us and give us understanding in regards to this study of resurrection. In Yeshua's name, amen. Amen. Now, how many of you have studied out the resurrection? All right, that's what I thought. It's interesting because the English word resurrection is only found in the New Testament. You don't find the word resurrection in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh. It's only in the New Testament. However, there are references to the resurrection in the Torah and the prophets, and I'll bring those out here in just a minute. But what I want to do is let's go to 1 Thessalonians 14.
1 Thessalonians 14.
4. I don't know where I got the extra one.
He's just checking, make sure.
I appreciate that, John.
It was,
Maybe I better change glasses.
it was a test.
1 Thessalonians chapter 4.
Hold on,
And I want you to go down to verse 13.
we're trying to find it.
I'm just gonna grab that real quick. All right. Let me read this for you. I'm gonna go through the rest of the chapter of chapter 4. So, we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren. Now, this is Paul. He's writing to this assembly, and usually what Paul is doing, he's answering questions. He's answering things that are concerning the people, and this is what he's saying. I do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve, as do the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, even so Yahuwah will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in the word of Yahuwah. For this we say to you, by the word of Yahuwah, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of Yeshua, the word of Yahuwah, shall not precede those who have fallen asleep. For Yahuwah himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of Yahuwah, and the dead in Yeshua shall rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet Yahuwah in the air, and thus we shall always be with Yahuwah. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. So apparently there was an issue where they were trying to figure out, even at that time, now when this was written, this was, probably right around 50, 60 AD. And if you heard any teachings, when the disciples were with Yeshua before he ascended to the Father, they asked him, when are you going to come back? When are you going to return? And I firmly believe, and I think many others do, that they were expecting him to come back soon. Relatively soon. And it's been that way ever since he ascended. That everybody's been looking for him, saying and telling that he's going to return on a certain day at a certain time. And so far, up to this point, even as early as last week, when there was a prediction he was supposed to return, well, he didn't. So there must still be more work that has to be done. All right, now, I want to look in verse 14. And I want to look at the term rose again. Now, that word rose again comes from the Greek 450. And literally all it means is to stand up. Now, I find this kind of interesting, the way this wording is used.
Yeah.
Huh?
She asked for you to repeat that.
Oh, what part? Oh, okay. In verse 14, rose again?
Yeah.
All right.
Means he went down and one more time and one more time, right?
Well,
And
this is what I'm gonna get to, yeah. So, see, you know some things that many people don't know, John, but, the term means to stand up. Literally, for the purpose here, it's to rise up, to go up. But literally, what it means in the Greek, it means to stand up. Now again, the interesting part here, just as John already pointed out, the word again is used there. Again. So that would indicate there was a point in time when the word of Yahuwah rose up before to the Father. This is how we understand this. He rose up to the Father. So does anybody know when that would have been? I know some of you already know this. 1920?
During the what's called when it started with Moses and Elijah on the
No.
mountain.
No.
Crucifixion?
Okay, at the crucifixion, on the day of,
Passover,
right,
Pesach.
or the first fruits. He was the first fruits, and we're gonna read that here in a minute. And he had to remember the story that when the lady saw him, and he said, "Don't touch me, because I have not ascended to the Father yet." Well, he could not be touched. If he was touched, then he would have been defiled and unclean and not able to be presented to the Father when he rose up. So he rose up to the Father, presented himself as first fruits of the resurrection. And we're going to read that. Just to verify it for you. He was the first fruit of the resurrection. Also, it was an example to us that there will be a resurrection. Now, so the word again means when he ascended to the Father and sat down at the right hand. That's what the word again means. That's what it's referring to, in my opinion. Now this is, and as I was looking at this, I thought of John 3. You can go there, or I'll just read it for you. John 3. Most of you have this memorized anyhow.
Chapter 3 or?
Chapter 3 of John, verse 6 and 7. Well, let me read it for you. And this is Yeshua speaking to Nicodemus, and he says, "That which is born of the flesh is flesh, that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Don't marvel that I said to you, you must be born again." Now, I'm keying in on the word again. You must be born again. So what does that reference? How can we take that? Well, he goes on and he says, you're born, and Paul brings this out in Corinthians. We'll go there here in a minute. You're born in the flesh, and then you're born in the Spirit. Let me say that again. You're born in the flesh. We're all flesh. I dealt with that on the first night. We're flesh, but we still needed to be born in the Spirit and to be born again. I also take it a little bit further to deal with the house of Israel. Because the house of Israel needs to be raised up again on this earth. It's a good majority of what I've been talking about this week. House of Israel needs to be raised up. All right. Now, as I read through verse 18, it gives a scenario, it gives an agenda of what's going to happen. And I don't want to, spend too much time on this, but it's clear and it's important because it's dealing, number one, it's dealing with those that have already passed, their souls have died, and their souls are in the grave. That's what I talked about last night. And they're awaiting the resurrection. All right. Now, we talked, it was brought up this morning. Go to Genesis 28 with me. Genesis 28. Now remember what I just read to you in Thessalonians. I'm going to ask you a question and ask you to compare the two. There's literally only one word that connects the two. So Genesis, what did I say, 28, 12 and 13. So if somebody would read that, please.
And he dreamed and saw a ladder set up on the earth. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
double checking, and its
Okay.
top reached to the heavens, and saw messengers of Elohim going up and coming down on it.
Louder.
And see, Yahuwah stood above it and said, I am Yahuwah Elohim of Abraham, your father, and the Elohim of Yitzhak. The land on which you are lying, I give it to you and your seed.
All right. Okay, so what word in there connects with 1 Thessalonians?
Ascending.
Huh?
Ascending.
Ascending. We talked a little bit about this morning. So ascending, if you look at the definition, means to go up. It's always fascinated me that when he saw this ladder, now Yahuwah's at the top of the ladder looking down. And these messengers are going up and then coming down. Going up and then coming down. Because whenever I heard this before years ago, I would always think that they were coming down and then going back up, coming down and going back up. So there's a meaning here that I believe that Yahuwah wants us to understand. And I believe it actually deals with the resurrection. Because we will, and it just as we read in Thessalonians, and we will be going up to meet him in the air, and then coming back down. Up, down, up, down. It's fascinating. And the Father is watching all this. All right. Now let's go back to John. 1 John.
Where's John?
No, John, Gospel of John chapter 1. I'm sorry. Thank you, Carmen. Doing a good job with me. John 1. Now I want to go down to 50 and 51. And we're gonna read basically the same thing. So let me read 50 and 51 for you in the Gospel of John, 1st chapter. And Yeshua answered and said to them, however, because I said to you that I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? That's I'm in the wrong place.
No, you keep going.
Oh, yeah. And I saw you under the fig tree. Do you believe you shall see greater things than these? Now truly, truly I say to you, you shall see the heavens open and the messengers of Yahuwah ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Same direction, ascending and descending, ascending and descending. So my question is, do we have angelic beings? Do we have messengers that are here on the earth now
Yes,
that are doing the service of Yahuwah?
yes,
Absolutely. And Paul talks about that in Corinthians, and with some having the gift of seeing spirits. I believe that's part of what is being talked about. Okay, now I'm going to go back over the definition of angel. I did this a couple of teachings ago. In the Greek, the word angel is number 32, and it's one having authority, a messenger, or pastor, or a pastor. In the Hebrew, it's 4397. A messenger, a prophet, a priest, ambassador, or king.
So what is it?
All right.
Which number?
Okay, which one? The Greek? The Greek number is 32. This is for the word angel when it's translated into the English Bibles.
In Hebrew?
In Hebrew, it's 4397. Malak is what that one is.
M-E or M-A?
M-A. So one's having authority, a messenger,
There is a man.
a prophet, a priest, ambassador, pastor, king. They're all the same thing. As I mentioned the other night, someone in authority. Someone in authority. So this is what's ascending and this is what is descending. These are angelic beings that are at the service of Yahuwah. Yes.
Is this what is referred to so often that we see in Old Testament? The hosts, heavenly hosts?
Hosts of heaven, yes.
Okay.
And that's gonna be a part of Shabbat lesson.
What?
So thank you for bringing that up. All right, now, I want to look at where the word resurrection appears in the Gospels. So let's go to Matthew 22. Go back to Matthew 22. And if somebody would just read for me verse 23, please.
That same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question.
Okay. Now, that little phrase there, who say there is no resurrection, that's not found in all the manuscripts. So some of your translations may have parentheses around it. All that means is it was not found in some of the manuscripts. All right, so I want to clarify something here. When it says the Sadducees, now who were the Sadducees? Anybody? John, you want to take a stab at that?
The priests.
A little more than that.
A sect.
Huh?
A
Well,
sect.
they were a sect, yes.
I get them mixed up. One's more liberal and one's very
Levitical priests?
conservative.
They don't believe
No,
in the
they're-
resurrection, the Pharisees.
There, some are from Levite. Say, what's that,
They
Carmen?
don't believe in the resurrections.
Well, that's what's stated here.
The Pharisees do believe in
The Pharisees do, but that is, what's stated here, well, let me, the Sadducees were the ruling party of the Jewish people at that time. Some were priests, some were not. They were the ruling party. There were 70 of them.
Sanhedrin, right?
Yes, Sanhedrin, yes. And they were the ones that said, yay or nay to if somebody had a question as to how to do something or not do something.
But
Now, huh?
Don't the Sanhedrin had a mixture of Pharisees and Sadducees?
Righteous ones.
I didn't quite hear you.
Sanhedrin,
Huh?
The judges, the Sanhedrin, did they not have a mixture of Sadducees and Pharisees?
There would have been a few Pharisees if they were well recognized among their people. The difference, let me just briefly, the history of the Sadducees is they came from Shammai, 300 years earlier than Yeshua. They were the ones that come out of Shammai, the teachings of Shammai. The Pharisees come out of the teachings of Hillel. Now that may not mean something to most of you, but it does, when you look at the history of both those groups, it gives you a good distinction because they were at battles with one another. What would take place is the Sadducean disciples would do battle with the Pharisaical disciples. And that's how they, would midrash, so to speak. But they were pretty kind of, at times, got a little knockdown, drag out type of thing.
Paul took advantage of that one time.
Yes, yeah, he did. Do you want to say something, Martha?
Yeah, I'm asking a question, okay, you're talking about Sadducees, Sanhedrin, and
Sadducees are the Sanhedrin.
Sadducees
They make
are
up
the Sanhedrin.
they make up what we call the Sanhedrin today.
Oh, okay.
And the Pharisees, let me put it this way, the Sadducees were ones that stayed pretty close around the temple and around some of the synagogues that were close by, and the people came to them. The Pharisees were the ones that went to the people. They were the traveling teachers. They were the ones that traveled around with disciples. Sadducees had, a place where they taught and they, came to gather together and study and things like that. The Pharisees were out and walking around and teaching on the go.
So you're a Pharisee?
How?
So are you a Pharisee?
Actually, I am.
I
I was gonna ask another question. Does that remind anybody of someone else who might have been considered of the Pharisaical sect?
Yeshua.
Yeshua?
Oh, yes. And culturally, there's more that it comes out, and there's historical events that are written about that. But when you read it in the Gospels, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but when you read it in the Gospels, the Sadducees, if they wanted to interact with Yeshua, they sent their disciples. The Pharisees interacted one-on-one. They didn't send their disciples, but their disciples were hanging around to learn what was going on. Which was important, because then they saw the interaction of different thoughts and different people groups. So that just gives you a little brief history, and you get that from,
Wasn't Paul said he was a Pharisee?
he was more than just a Pharisee. Pharisee of Pharisees. So what does that mean? He's a Pharisee of Pharisees.
He was double dipper.
Double dipper?
He had
I like that though.
more authority.
He had more authority, but in what way?
Goes about first.
Wasn't he sitting in the Sanhedrin sometimes?
He could approach the Sanhedrin.
When they're judged, our Messiah.
Yeah, he could approach
Wasn't
the
he sitting there
Sanhedrin.
too and
But
ruling?
But a Pharisee of Pharisees means you raise up disciples that become Pharisees.
We're very well educated.
Yeah, well educated. That's what that means. And so Yeshua himself, had he gone on in his life and continued teaching and having disciples, would have become a Pharisee of Pharisees. So, just to clear that up. All right, but to clear up also, the Sadducees did believe in a resurrection.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, they did. And unfortunately, because this little phrase is in here, turns the minds of people to think that they didn't believe in the resurrection. Well, you see, what resurrection was Yeshua teaching, do you think?
His own?
Huh?
There is no other resurrection. There is no other one, is there?
Well, okay, hang in there,
Resurrection.
because by the word of John, we're gonna see that, yeah, there's more than one resurrection.
Which John?
John, the one that wrote the gospel, John, that John.
Not this one.
Not that John. Not the John that was across me, or not the John that was to my left.
Well, the first resurrection or the second?
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. See, you know this because we've talked about this. But I want to make clear that the Sadducees did believe in a resurrection. It wasn't real clear, and that's what I said when we started. You only find the English word resurrection in the New Testament. You won't find it in the Tanakh. You won't find it in the Old. But you will see elements in the Old that is talking about a resurrection. All right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff in Job.
It's talked about in the Old Testament without actually saying the word.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so let me go on. I think I've got a couple of more verses here. Let's see. Who was reading? Was that you, Mike? Okay, why don't you go down, let's go ahead and go down to verse 32 for me, if you'd read
Okay.
that.
Teacher, they said, Moses told us that if a man dies without having children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for him. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first one married and died, and since he had no children, he left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and third brother, right on down to the 7th. Finally, the woman died. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of 7, since all of them were married to her?
Okay, hold off just there.
Okay.
Did you pick up on it, on that verse? They believe in a resurrection. That's the whole thing. Whose wife is she going to be in the resurrection?
Oh, I always interpreted that as they were challenging us, what they thought was a spoof.
Well, yeah, that's how it's taken.
Uh-huh.
But if we read it in the context, they are literally asking how, whose wife is he gonna be? Now, I think Mark or Luke brings this out. We'll go there here in a minute, I think. But they do believe in a resurrection,
This one.
okay?
Ah,
Yeah, they do believe in a resurrection. That's why they're asking it. Trying to, trip Yeshua up. But now let's go on. Mike, go on to verse
Okay.
32.
Jesus replied, Yeshua replied, you are in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. But about the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac. I'm sorry, I'm not used to.
You're doing fine. No, you're
Okay.
doing fine. You just go ahead and do
Okay.
naturally.
Okay.
That's fine.
Have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living.
All right. So we're gonna look at that here in just a minute. That last verse. But that's a key thing that Yeshua would bring out to the people. He's not the Elohim of the dead. He's the Elohim of the living. Now, that doesn't mean living in the flesh, in our soul. That's not what it's talking about.
It's alive in the spirit.
Actually, it's dealing with the resurrection. It's dealing with the what is resurrected, being the same form, the same state that Yeshua, when he resurrected in. The incorruptible body. And that's why early on it says, you know, they're asking him, who is she gonna be married to? Who is she gonna be? He said, there's no marriage or given in marriage in heaven. There's no need for that. But you know, that teaching is still a faithful teaching among many denominations. And even among the Jewish people. So yes, there was some, John, there was some trickery that was trying to be played there. Because, you know, and with telling the Sadducees, who were the ones that supposedly knew everything, I didn't put that way before, they were the ones that were the most religious, very, you know, hard line.
And they were taking that position with Yeshua,
Yes,
trying to say, we know. We
Right.
got you, answer this now. We got you cornered.
And so verse 33, let me read verse 33. And when the multitudes heard, they were astonished at his teaching. And I always have to ponder on this verse. They were astonished at his teachings. He must have had a beautiful way of just saying one thing and meaning 100 different ways to meet the people right where they were at. It just fascinates me. And so, you know, you got a guy like me that stumbles with words and stuff, and I don't even know what my first language is anymore, so. So, actually, this is where I'm going to start on Shabbat, is right here. So, all right, now let's go to Luke. Yeah, let's go to Luke, chapter 20. Luke is right before John, right after Mark. I know that because I had to memorize it 40 years ago. Luke chapter 20. I'm gonna go down to 34, yeah. Now this is telling the story, the same story that we just read in Matthew. But there's a couple of extra things that are listed here. So let's read 34 through 38. Somebody read 34 through 38 for me.
And Yeshua answers them, saying, the sons of this eon marry and are married off. But they who are accounted worthy to obtain that eon and the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are married off, neither indeed can they even die, for they are equal to the angels and are the sons of Elohim, being the sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses disclosed at the briar, when he worded Yahweh is the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, the Elohim of Jacob. For he is not Elohim of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him.
Okay. So did you pick up a couple of different things there? What the Matthew passage had? Pretty much 34 and 35 are stating the same thing. But 36, verse 36, they will never die anymore. Never die anymore.
36.
It's important to understand that. Because once this soul goes into the ground, once it leaves, its last breath leaves this soul, it's dead, it's done with. It's never coming back. I want to make that clear, it's never coming back. That's why if you go into Thessalonians again, we get a new body, not this old one, we get a new body. Nobody knows what that looks like. We might be just beautiful and gorgeous and slim and just looking really good, because we've got perfect bodies.
No more pain, no more sorrow.
No more pain, no more sorrow.
No more pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. But you wanna know something? You all have perfect bodies now. You probably never heard that before.
Flesh bond.
Yes, even in the flesh, your body's perfect.
And who's our?
Yahuwah does not make imperfect things. It's because of the flesh and because of our actions and because of what we think and what we do, that's what makes our bodies imperfect, blemished. Blemished. Nothing blemished is going to enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Culture has a lot to do with like that too.
Yes,
Like
it does, very much so.
the way
Culture has a
people
lot.
Perceive things. I
Yeah.
guess.
And that's been going on for thousands of years.
That's why we have to be washed
Yeah,
in the blood.
but you see, for me personally, when I'm resurrected into the kingdom, I won't do any washing. Because I will have my perfect body. I will have my uncontaminated body.
Working knees and everything.
Who knows if I'll need knees? I'm gonna be flying.
You're the Gaspar the Ghost.
No, I wasn't expecting that, John.
You're not gonna help.
But yes, I will have perfect knees because I'm gonna be ascending and descending the ladder. One way to look at it. So,
Stairs.
I wanted to read something to you. It's out of the book that I started off with, Resurrection and the Restoration of Israel. But I want to read an opening part of what John Levinson wrote. And this is dealing with, well, I'll let you, let me read it and then we'll discuss it.
Could you say John 11?
No. I'm reading from this book. It's not from the scriptures. The resurrection of the dead has no early roots and sources in the Hebrew Bible, which offers a vision of life and death and the relationship between them that is strikingly different from those that underlie a belief in resurrection. When people died, they were thought to descend without exception to the dreary netherworld known as Sheol. That's what I brought out on the first night. From which there was no chance to return. Only very late in the second period of the second temple. As the last books of the Tanakh, the prophets, were being written, did an alternative position appear. The hope for resurrection developed because the need to compensate the martyrs for their demise, proving Yahuwah is just after all. Now, talking about the martyrs, you know, because there were those that were dying for their faith. And so as the time went on, people were wondering, there was this big question. What happens to us after this? There's gotta be a resurrection. We didn't go through this, just die and do all of this and die and do it in vain.
Yeah.
And that's part of what Paul brings out in his writings. If there is no resurrection, what we're doing here is worthless. We can just stop doing it. There's no need. We're just gonna live our life, go to the grave, and that's it. That's to a degree what it was back then. But that changed. It started to change at the time of Yeshua. The second temple period. The hope for resurrection developed because I just read that, but let me read it again. The hope for resurrection developed because of the need to compensate the martyrs for their demise, proving Yahuwah, is just after all. The resurrection finds its place within a larger vision, not of the continuation of the world, but of its redemption. I'll read that again and we'll get some explanation here. Resurrection finds its place within a larger vision, not of the continuation of the world, but of its redemption. Meaning that when the resurrection takes place, there will be a drastic change. However, the world will be redeemed. You follow what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying?
Say it again.
Say it again.
When the resurrection occurs, the world is going to change. It will be redeemed.
I missed the part, the road of what?
The world,
Oh, yeah?
when the resurrection occurs,
Right.
the world will change. Let me go back here.
Okay.
Too far now. There we go. The larger vision is what it is. I missed that. The larger vision is not that this world, the way we know it today, is gonna continue on. That's what they're talking about. This is what our Jewish brethren have come to this conclusion. This is going to change. It's not gonna be the same. And I'll talk about that a little more in detail on Shabbat. Because the world, when the resurrection takes place, when Yeshua returns, will not look like what we see it today. It will be different. And actually, for 2,000 years, that's what our Jewish brethren have been saying. And what I just told you, we'll read in the scriptures. We'll read about that. And that's another one of those passages that is a little misunderstood. Okay. So in Luke, as we continue on through here, so Yeshua, he's presenting a resurrection. Now Carmen brought this up earlier, and this is why what we're going to talk about now fits here. Which resurrection?
The first.
The first. You sure it's not the second or third or fourth?
The first has to come first.
Golly, I never thought about that. See, that just verifies what John says about you.
Yeah,
You got wisdom.
Not my wisdom.
You want to say something, John?
yes, but let me find it again. It has to do with the fact that it has to be the first because they won't die ever again.
Right. Exactly. See, there's no death after that.
Right.
If you remember, if I can quote myself, see if it's in my notes. When the soul dies, when the body dies, when death comes in, then Sheol, it takes control over death. If you can understand what I'm saying. Because I read that here, they believe that, it's written here, I showed that to you the other night. This body goes to, well, that was in Lyston, I think. Body goes to, you can use 4 different translations. You remember what they were?
Sheol, Hades,
Sheol, Hades,
Hell,
Hell,
Paradise.
well, Paradise or Gehenna.
Yeah.
Gehenna. All right. So, but all 3 of those, Sheol, Hades, and Gehenna fall under the category of the word hell. All right. And it just means you go to the ground. You're dust to dust, ashes to ashes. It goes down to the earth. Everything returns to the earth. That's not hard to understand, I don't think. But death so Hades, or basically it's Hades is the word I'm gonna use, is the ruler over death. It's the ruler over this body, this soul that dies until a certain point. And that certain point is the resurrection.
Where we're told that death and Hades will give up their dead.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right, so let's pray and, well, very good, John. It's where, yeah, death and Hades will give up the soul, but not the soul, the spirit will be at that point.
Isn't there a scripture, I forget what it is, oh, there is a victory, there is a sting? I think it's
Right.
in the New
Mhm.
Testament.
Yep.
I forget what it was, do you remember?
Yeah, no, I know which one you're talking about. I don't know,
Yeah.
I do, I read it today, but I
Oh.
can't tell you where it's at. So, the original patriarchs, who the promise was given to, they're the ones that, as we read in Luke here, because they're listed there is because they were given the promise of the inheritance of the land. And when the writer of Hebrews brings us out in chapter 11, that, by faith, they believed that there was a kingdom coming to this earth, that they would inherit this land, that they would be there in the resurrection, that they would be there in the kingdom. They believed that. That's what the writer of Hebrews tells. That's another one of those that gets a little misunderstood, because it's dealing with the first resurrection. And that is one thing that Yeshua was teaching. This is why I believe when it says here, the people were amazed at what he was saying, because they'd never heard it before. And the Pharisees were picking up on it.
Yeah, that had to be the ironic part for them, because even though they'd never heard it taught that way, they had read it hundreds of times and knew somewhat of what he was talking about when he said it.
Yeah. And
Having read it and never looked at it in that context before.
exactly.
Wow.
And so, Yeshua was bringing something not new,
Right.
but bringing an element of, what to believe, what to look forward to, what's going to take place. All of us in this room are looking for something better than what we have right now, especially in the resurrection. We're all looking for the same thing. Well, if an individual comes, if the word of Yahuwah comes before us and says it's going to be there, you're going to get it, you're going to receive it, like you did with the patriarchs, like you did with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you're going to get this, then that means I'm going to be living at some point in time, especially if you're about ready to pass away. That's what it says. Abraham never saw the kingdom. He never saw this city that was not made with human hands. That's what he was looking for. That's always the reference to the kingdom of heaven coming down. All right, kind of got off here a little bit. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 15. First Corinthians 15. We're going to go down to verse 20. And chapter 15 is dealing with not only Yeshua's resurrection, but also those that follow him, that come after him. And this is what we're going to be talking about here, down in verse 20. All right, verse 20, chapter 15. Now Yeshua has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who are asleep. And I already talked about the first fruits. For since by man, death, and literally what it's talking about is, and then by a man also the resurrection of the dead. By one man, Adam, the first, who died. And the second one is the resurrection of the dead, and that is through the word of Yahuwah, that is through Yeshua. For as in Adam all die, also in Mashiach all shall be made alive. However, each in his own order. Mashiach, the first fruits, talked about that. After that, those who are Mashiach's at his coming. Then, the end. We talked about that today. The end of what, John? What's the end?
The great day.
Okay, it's the great day.
Yeah.
It's the end of this age. It's the end of, right before we go into the kingdom of heaven. Right before the kingdom of heaven comes down. This is what it's talking about.
That's after the 1,000 years, right?
Yes, and that's what's going to come up here. When he delivers up the kingdom to Yahuwah, the Father, when he has abolished all rule and all authority and power, for he must reign until he has put his enemies under his feet. The last enemy that will be abolished is death. He must rule and reign until death is abolished. What does that mean? Is death going to continue on during the millennium?
Yes.
Yeah,
Outside.
outside the kingdom, death will continue on. Living will continue on, the soul will continue to live, death will rule and reign. For he has put, verse 27, for he has put all things in subjection under his feet. But when he says all things are put in subjection, it is evident that he is expected who put all things in subjection to him. And when all things are in subjection to him, meaning the Son, the word of Yahuwah, himself also will be subjected to the one who subjected all things to him, that Yahuwah may be all in all. Otherwise, what will those who are immersed for the dead? If the dead are not raised at all, why then are they immersed for them? Why are we also in danger, in danger every hour? I protest, brethren, now this is again Paul speaking, by the boasting in you, which I have in Yeshua HaMashiach, our Messiah, I die daily. Now he's moved it from a physical to a spiritual, to a soulish event. If from human motives I fought with wild beasts at Ephesus, what does it profit me? If the dead are not raised, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. So become sober-minded as you ought. Stop sinning, for some have no knowledge of Yahuwah. I speak to your shame. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna go through the rest of what I have here, but let's move down to. Let's go down to verse 41 because I want to tie in something here. There is one glory of the sun, another glory of the moon, another glory of the stars. For a star differs from star in glory. So if you don't believe that, just go outside tonight where you don't have the light hitting you or something and just look up and see the difference in the glory of the stars. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable, it is raised an imperishable, meaning the body. It is sown a perishable and raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness and raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual one. So, also it is written, the first man Adam became a living soul. Talked about that. The last Adam, referring to Yeshua, a life-giving spirit. And I'm going to bring this out right here, because I always find it interesting, even in the Passover, when Yeshua was hanging on the cross, there were two what were these men on either side of him? Thieves. What did I explain the thieves were? Kidnappers. They stole lives. They were of the avenue of Adam. Then you have the one that's in the center of them is a life giver. Even though in his death, he's a life giver. I want you to think about that, because that's exactly what his death represented, giving life, and that's what Paul is writing here. The spiritual is not first, but the natural, then the spiritual. The first man is from the earth, earthy. The second man is from heaven. As is the earthy, also are those who are earthy. And as is the heavenly, so also are those who are heavenly. Verse 49. And just as we have borne the image of the earthy, hallelujah, here we go, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Hallelujah. If I heard those words directly from the mouth of Yeshua, man, I would be, wow. That is some heavy stuff. All right. I'm going to finish here in verse 50. And I've got a few more things to say. Now I say this, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot enter or inherit the kingdom of Yahuwah, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven. There will be no one in the flesh within the kingdom of heaven. No one. No one will be able to enter. It's only going to be the imperishable that will be able to enter. All right. Okay, I'm going to give me about 15 more minutes, I think, because I want us to go to Revelation.
And there's that scripture, 55, verse 55.
55? Oh, yeah, there it is. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? All right, chapter 20 of Revelation. I was going to read the whole, well, let me read the whole thing, so bear with me as we do this, because this is important.
20?
Yeah, chapter 20. Somebody read for me verse 1 through 6, please.
And I see an angel descending from the heavens, having the key of the abyss, and a mega fetter in his hand, and he overpowers the dragon, the ancient serpent who is Diabolos and Satan, and binds him 1,000 years, and casts him into the abyss, and shuts him and seals him, so that he never no way still seduces the Goyim, the nations, till the 1,000 years are fulfilled. And after these he must be loosed a little time. And I see thrones and those sitting thereon, and they are given judgment, and the souls of those axed for the witness of Yeshua, and for the word of Elohim, who neither worshipped the beast, nor his icon, nor had taken his tattoo on their foreheads or in their hands, and they live and reign with Messiah 1,000 years. And the rest of the dead who live not until the 1,000 years are fulfilled, this is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy whoever has part in the first resurrection. Over these the second death has no authority, but they become priests of Elohim and of Messiah, and reign with him 1,000 years.
All right. So there we have what's spelled out as far as going into the kingdom of heaven. It can be a little confusing at times, but this is the first resurrection, just as Martha read in verse 6. If you're in the first resurrection, the second resurrection will not affect us. So I want to be in the first resurrection. However, there are some things that are required of us to make sure that we're in the first resurrection. That's a whole nother study in and of itself. All right, 7 through 10. Somebody want to read that?
When the 1,000 years are over, the adversary will be set free from his prison, and will go out to deceive the nations in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for the battle. Their number is countless as the sand on the seashore, and they came up over the breadth of the land and surrounded the camp of Yah's people and the city he loves. But the fire came down from heaven and consumed them. The adversary who had deceived them was hurled into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever.
All right. Now, yes, Mike.
What's Gog and Magog?
They're places.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But they do have a spiritual connotation, but they're literal places or.
Is there, like, obviously, I mean, do you know the place where they were then? Like, where are they now?
They were in the north. It's not so much where they are now, but when they were.
What do they call it? Do they still call it that?
No.
Just so I can get
I'm
an
trying to think of north of the Mediterranean.
It's kinda like, it's kinda like the old Asia Minor Turkey
Yeah, yeah.
area.
Okay,
Okay?
okay, thank you. Cool.
And again, because that's not a new term here. You can go back into some of the prophets and they talk about that. I think Ezekiel, maybe Daniel.
Ezekiel 38.
Ezekiel 38, there you go.
Okay.
So at this particular time, now this is after the 1,000 years is completed, that's what verse 7 says. Then Hasatan is judged and thrown in the lake of fire. And some call that Gehenna. I'm surprised somebody doesn't have Gehenna there. And then, verse 11. Let me go ahead and read 11 through 14, or 11 through 13 rather. And I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, from whose presence earth and heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, the great, the small, standing before the throne. Books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books, according to their deeds. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Hades gave up dead which were in them, and they were judged, every one according to their deeds. And death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. Now, before I read the last one, understand just those 4 verses. This is what some people call the Great White Throne Judgment. But if we focus a little bit, because this came up this morning, we talked about the books that are opened. The books that are opened are the deeds. It kind of spells it out here for us. Good deeds they did, evil deeds they did. And I don't know what balances them out. I'm not the judge on this. The only one that can be the judge is Yahuwah himself, by his word. But nonetheless, he's the judge. Actually, I find it fascinating. Years ago when I did a study, the first place where God is mentioned in Genesis, you look it up, it means a lawgiver. Lawgiver. The last place that God is mentioned in Revelation, the one who brings punishment. I found that fascinating. But death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. Why? Why did they need to be thrown into the lake of fire?
We burn.
Huh?
Then we burn.
Yeah.
I mean, in that fire, so that.
Lake of fire is not like what we conceive fire to be. It's torment. But why? Why throw them in there?
Because they've been
So they
judged.
will be purified.
To be purified?
Yeah, with fire.
That's interesting.
There's nothing left.
I didn't think about it that way.
They've been
Carmen?
judged.
Huh?
They've been judged. They have to.
They've been judged, yeah.
They're not needed anymore.
All right.
Not needed anymore.
They've completed their task. And they will no longer have control over anything that dies. Because death is done and over with at this time. It's gonna be no more death.
You can't destroy that.
Because there's no more soul.
Oh, okay. Whoa.
Exactly, right?
Is it the body only being fired, burned, or also the spirit? Right.
Well, okay, and that's verse 15. That's what verse 15 is about. Verse 15 says, if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. So if your name is not written in the Lamb's book of life, and now you're coming up to the throne, and the PDF of your life is thrown to you real quick, and at the very end it says, okay,
Cool.
you made it through.
Ah, okay.
Now let me look here. It's, okay, your name's in the book of life, so therefore, okay, you're good. The next one comes up, same thing, next one, then all of a sudden a guy comes up, one person comes up, and PDF goes through, finds out, ooh, he did a lot of bad things. Ooh. Now he's sweating it. He doesn't need to be heated up in the fire, he's sweating it.
They do it.
And then Yahuwah opens that book of life. Where's your name? I can't find your name anywhere. There's a lot of blotted out things here, but I can't find your name. Sorry, buddy. In the lake of fire you go. So the servant angels come along, grab him both arms, and call him off.
It says there,
That's my opinion, people. Huh?
it's the second death, right? That's what it says.
That's the second death, yeah. Because in the first resurrection, there is no death. There is no death. That's why it says, we will not be affected by the second death. The first death is you die, your physical body dies.
Oh, dude, man, okay.
The second death is, you got no hope.
Yeah, okay.
If your name's not found written in the Lamb's Book of Life, you have no hope. All right, now I know some of you know this, and I want you to answer it very loudly. When is your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life?
Before the foundation of the
Before the
earth.
foundation of the earth.
Well, if that's the loudest you can go. Before the foundation of the world,
At the beginning.
at the very beginning. I was always taught if I did not receive Yeshua, that my name would not be written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And something happened.
How can he be taken out when he never was in it?
Okay, hold on, I'll get to that, that's a good question. But something happened. I read the scriptures, and I couldn't find it. But that's what I did find, my name was written there before this whole thing began. Before this whole earth was created.
So you're saying, so Yehovah knew that you were gonna make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
For the-
Yep, exactly. All right, Carmen, remind me again, what,
How can he be taken out when he
Blotted
was
out.
never in it?
right, being blotted out.
Or blotted out, yeah.
And again, that's up to him. You know, we talked about it this morning. Moses came up to, you know, he was speaking to Yehovah, and he says, if you're not gonna go with us, if you're going to reject us, because that's what the whole conversation was about, because Yehovah said to him, Moses, I'm gonna kill them all off, and I can start with you and do just as good a job as creating these people. But Moses said, no. If you're not gonna go with us, blot me out of your book. Well, so Yehovah said, well, I'm not gonna blot you out, so I'm putting a little commentary in here. That's why you can't, your name cannot be found, because it was blotted out.
Hence, in the case of Moses, Moses revealed what was in his heart, which is what Yah was looking for.
Very good, thank you. Moses' heart was revealed in that whole
Yep,
situation.
one of those test things.
Yeah, one of those testings, exactly. Well, I think I've given you something to think about tonight. And on Shabbat, 2:00 service, after our worship and everything, I will be presenting the last part. Okay? The part of eternal life. It's my 8th day teaching. So, be prepared for that. Any questions, thoughts, comments, or rebuttals?
Sorry I have to bother you, but
Don't.
we just read about Gog and Magog, right? So that means that war that's been talked about is happening after 1,000 years.
Yes, it's gonna happen again.
Again? I
Yeah.
mean, are we gonna have it first and then another one?
Well, it's the turmoil, it's the destruction, it's the upheaval of the earth among the people.
Outside.
And if you going by the text here, Hasatan, when he's released, he's going to gather all of these people that are listening to his words, and it'll be just like that time when the people come against Yahuwah's people, even before. Yeah, there will be a war before the kingdom comes to this earth.
This one's a short one though.
Yeah, the first one will be a short one.
But I always thought that everybody's waiting for Gog and Magog to happen, right? But now we read that it's after the 1,000 years.
No, John, it's a different context, brother.
Yeah.
It's a different context, okay? They're two separate events. Don't mix the second one up with the first context, okay?
That might be, I'll tell you what, John, that might be a good one for our coffee talk.
Okay.
How about that? And I'll do that on Friday, because John's gonna be leading tomorrow morning, because I have to go, Rosemary and I are gonna go visit somebody.
You don't have to.
That would be a good one.
You're
Huh?
choosing to go.
Go to that funeral.
What time are you leaving?
Thursday night.
In the morning, I'll probably late afternoon. I'll wait till you the teaching. What time's the teaching?
Well, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock in the morning? Or
For
I'll be there?
Friday.
Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Oh,
But
no.
you'll be-
helping
There's
the
gonna be
dead.
no tabletop.
All right, well,
That's okay, I'll hear it from him. This is
Okay.
gonna record it anyway.
yeah, we can record it, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I
Sorry
won't
about
be
it,
here.
I like to be here.
What, John? I can record it.
I'd like you to, I'd like your, input on something, if you would, please, in light of what you've taught tonight. All right? In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, 1 Corinthians 3, starting in verse 10. Paul is writing,
Okay,
and he says, according to the grace of Elohim which is given me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building on it. But each person must be careful how he builds on it. For no one can lay a foundation other than the one which has been laid, which is Messiah Yeshua. Now if anyone builds on that foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, each one's work will become evident. For the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each one's work. If anyone's work which he builds remains, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet as though through the fire.
Ooh, I like that.
Now, my question is, I think it's my question. This is determining who's inside the kingdom and who's outside the kingdom. Is that correct?
to some degree, yes.
In the kingdom, but some are inside, some are outside. Am I thinking along the right lines?
Yeah,
I mean, Yeshua's looking at the work that we've done since we have been, with him. And our obedience and our disobedience is what's being displayed here. The work that's being done. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And again, there's degrees. We know that there's going to be levels in the
Right.
kingdom.
Right.
There's
right,
levels in this world right now.
Right.
And see, the word that you used here at the tail end of verse 15, that he himself shall be protected, yet as through fire, through struggles, through turmoil,
Okay.
through correction. That's the way I like to look at this.
Mhm.
He's being corrected. He's gonna be hard tested. Because he built with straw, hay, wood, something that if fire came against it, was going to burn it up.
Okay. I had one more revelation as you were teaching too, on the resurrection body. Getting a clearer picture each time we go through this. I'm actually tracking with you now.
Okay,
And it occurred to me that it was significant for Paul to see what he saw on the road to Damascus. Because at this time, James was already gone, but John and Peter could verify what Paul's saying he saw, because they saw it themselves on the Mount of Transfiguration.
right.
So that's just verification for Peter and John to know that, yes, he saw what he saw. And to Paul, that meant that Yeshua was actually resurrected.
Right. Exactly. Amen. Amen. All right. Hallelujah. Went a little long tonight, but